today is Pete Soderman, thinking, oh, please forgive me, I forgot the meditation. Karen Miles is going to lead this meditation.
Good morning. As it turns out, today is a day that is being celebrated by a global meditation that begins at 11 o'clock. And so I thought, since I am a meditation teacher, that we might participate in the global meditation, even if it's a half an hour early, and even if it's only for 3 minutes. So I am going to teach you a breath meditation. Many of you know this, but it's a lovely way to start any day. So please check your posture. It's best if both of your feet are flat on the floor in front of you. Check to see that you're balanced, your body is balanced in your chair, left to right, that is, so you're sitting evenly. Straight back, soft front, and tip your head down slightly. So the image here is that if there were a thread up to the sky, or down from the sky, it would land right at the crown of your head. Your hands should be either loosely in your lap or palms down on your thighs. You may close your eyes or leave them downcast, but slightly open in a soft gaze. So now, notice that you're breathing. The body breathes continually, so let's notice it. Take notice of where you most feel your breath happening. Is it in the lower abdomen? Is it in the chest? Or maybe you notice it at the tip of your nose and on your upper lip. But wherever you think you feel, you sense your breath, stay there. And just be with the sensation of your breath coming in, the in-breath, the pause, the out-breath, the pause, and then it begins again. So let's sit for just a few minutes watching your breath. When your attention goes to the future, like what's going to happen next, or to the past, what just happened, pick up your attention and place it back on the sensation of breath. Do this 1,000,000 times. Return to your breath. Your breath is very interesting because one day there won't be an in-breath. So it's actually quite lovely to make friends with your breath while you have the chance. This is a calming practice. Very helpful to do when you're stressed, anxious, angry, or any of those other unwholesome emotions. Use it when you think about it. I think it will be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Our speaker today is Pete Soderman. Thinking about thinking. Einstein noted that we can't solve our problems with the same kind of thinking with which we cause them. Looking ahead to the problems our civilization faces, Pete asks whether the well-known ideals model of critical thinking can be tweaked to eliminate many of the preconceived notions that keep us from new ways of looking at our problems. Pete Soderman is the author of Powerless No Longer, Reprogramming Your Addictive Behavior. He spoke here last year on neuroplasticity and a number of acronyms, recovery, smart recovery. He has made his permanent home in Lakeside for 3 years. Let us welcome Pete Soderman. We'll have a little question period at the end.
Well, we'll have probably a long question period. We won't have that problem, believe me. Morning, my name is Pete Soderman. About a week and a half ago, my friend Jim Spivey emailed me saying that he had a cancellation for today and asking me if I could possibly put something together. I told him sure. I made a trade with him though. As Jim knew, I've been writing a book for 2 years. The whole time I've been down here, that's no secret. I keep telling people the same thing. Yeah, it's almost done, it's almost done. Well, it is done, but it's not published because it's still in the hands of my copy editors. And Jim, I think, thought perhaps, well, maybe he's ready to talk about it. Well, he's not ready to talk about it, not the whole thing. Okay. So I blackmailed Jim and said, fine, I'll bail you out, but I want another Sunday in October, November, when everybody's back here, to talk about my book. And he said, oh, fine, no problem. So I'm here today. Day or two after Jim emailed me, I got one of the bugs that was floating around here. This particular one was very flu-like and nailed me for about a week. So for about a week, I did very little of anything. When I came out of feeling poorly, I thought, well, what am I going to talk about? Well, I had just finished a section of chapter 13 of my book called Critical Thinking, a subsection. I thought, well, I've already done the research on that, so I might as well go with that. I have given 3 prior talks here. The first, last February, I guess, was on neuroplasticity, or how we learn and how the brain is capable of changing as a result of new experiences, how we build new neural networks, and if we start using them, the old ones are pruned away. Then I gave a talk on rational emotive behavior therapy with emphasis on an aging population and how we can overcome the emotional upsets that we get because the world isn't the way we think it should be. Emotional upsets are always the difference between our expectations and reality. Well, how can we better deal with reality? It was that kind of thing. Then I gave a talk, Jim was kind enough to let me talk about a recovery group that I started here called Smart Recovery. SMART stands for self-management and recovery training. SMART is an international organization of secular self-help groups that approach recovery from a cognitive point of view. We teach a set of evidence-based tools to anyone who wants to recover from an addiction. Started a meeting here about a year ago, and it's going pretty well. As I mentioned, my book is finished now. It should be published in a little bit. It's called Powerless No Longer, Reprogramming Your Addictive Behavior. And this talk is from chapter 13, a subsection on critical thinking. Our belief systems, it turns out, are the result of neural networks that are formed by our experiences, our learning, our whole process of creating our worldviews. They're rather difficult to change or overcome. There's a few things that have to be necessary in order to do that. First of all, we have to want to. That's perhaps the most difficult. And then we have to practice new things and look at our beliefs and so on and so forth. It's really important for an addict in recovery to do that kind of thing. Because in order to be able to withstand urges and cravings and deal with the frustrations and upsets that we all have and still stay away from the substance that we've been using to cope with all those feelings requires a change in beliefs, requires a change in the belief system, requires thinking another way. Now, addicts tend to go to the dark side. Maybe you didn't know that, but the old joke is if a quote-unquote normal person has a flat tire, they call AAA. If an addict has a flat tire, they call the suicide prevention hotline. The reason for that is what goes through your head are thoughts like, oh geez, the tire will always be flat. The man won't come. I'll be stuck here on the side of the road. I won't be able to afford it. I'll lose my job. I'll, on and on and on it goes as the toilet flushes, so on and so forth. So these are all thoughts that come from beliefs that in order to change that kind of thinking, you have to go to the root cause of them. Beliefs become muscle memory. Something happens, we react to it, oftentimes, in fact, many times, most of the time, without thinking about it. Something happens and boom, we go off in a direction. So for addicts, they have to look at their beliefs because they lead to low self-esteem, undue stress, and eventual relapse. For the rest of us, we should consider looking at our belief systems from time to time because the world is a different place than it was yesterday. And the changes in the world are rapidly accelerating. Plus, we still have the same variety of stressors in daily life that we always had. The world is changing. Thinking in the old paradigms that we've been thinking in most of our lives are sometimes no longer valid anymore. Can't trust governments, companies, banks to do the right thing. Okay? Some are dysfunctional, others are corrupt, and they're working for people who we have basically no contact with and no way to influence. The whole thing can get rather confusing and lead to our the growing of our stress load. I mean, institutions that we used to count on are working against our interests, clearly. There's little we can do about that, but it's still a source of emotional upset. Sometimes it seems that there's no solid ground, especially for young people, our children and grandchildren. When we try to help them, when we try to talk to them, when we try to give them advice or anything else, it seems that we don't really know what's going on. We don't understand it oftentimes. So how do we go about questioning our thoughts and beliefs? First of all, should we? Do we care if our beliefs are true or not? It's an interesting question sometimes. We might say, yes, I always care if my beliefs are true, but really, do we? Because sometimes the emotional payoff of having a particular belief is worth it, even though we know part or all of the belief might be fantasy. For us, the emotional payoff is worth it. So we look at that belief and say, I don't want to change that, because if I change that, I won't accrue this benefit anymore, or that benefit anymore. That's fine. What matters is what we individually care about. In other words, what is important to us, and how do we go about determining that? And if we do determine we want to change a belief, what are some of the questions we should ask in order to do that? Human beings evolved over thousands of years adapting to the environment of the African savanna. There was a reproductive advantage that accrued with obeying the orders of older, wiser members of the tribe. Instructions like, don't swim with the alligators, don't wander far from the camp at night, were expected to be obeyed without question. Young humans who obeyed these restrictions were more likely to reach puberty and reproduce than others, so the tendency to obey authority became dominant in our gene pool. Nothing surprising about that. This tendency begins to disappear sometime around puberty, as every parent knows, and the adolescent begins to make more of their own decisions. Children, small children, tend to see the world as black or white, good or bad. Adolescents see the world through more complicated lenses. They're more likely to question the assertions of parents or society, and are less likely to accept what we tell them as the absolute truth. These are healthy developments, of course, and if properly directed, can lead to the establishment of critical thinking skills. Unfortunately, our culture, at least today, seems more geared toward teaching young people what to think than how to think. A commonly accepted definition of critical thinking goes like this. Critical thinking is the intellectually disciplined process of actively and skillfully conceptualizing, applying, analyzing, synthesizing, and or evaluating information gathered from or generated by observation, experience, reflection, reasoning, and communication as a guide to belief or action. That's simply a definition of critical thinking. It's quite a mouthful, but what it's asking us to do is question not only the clarity and accuracy of our thinking, but also the depth and breadth of it. Not just considering if our facts are correct, but also if we're taking all of the alternatives into account. Is the content we're using relevant? And is our thinking process logical. In other words, using critical thinking skills forces us to think about our thinking. How are we going about this? It starts with critical questions about our thinking and beliefs, because asking the right questions is half the battle. Look at any question, any belief you might have, and the first question is, what do I think or believe about this? Let's say that I believe that Ajijic is the best location for an expat to live in Mexico.
Yes!
Okay? That's a belief that I have, let's say. Now, it is a belief I have. Obviously, I'm here. The first question that I need to ask if I'm a critical thinker is, why do I think or believe that? Well, I live here, you know. I like it here. I like the people. I like this. I like that. Okay, those are all nice, but they're also emotional. Okay, there's no fact there. The next question is, what is my knowledge or belief based on? Is it a fact or something else? Well, if I take a little longer view, there's a lot of people I've met here, and a lot of people I know here, who have lived in other places in Mexico. Me, I've only been to one other place in Mexico for any length of time. Okay, and that was the coast a long time ago, many years ago. I haven't lived anywhere else in Mexico. I haven't traveled a great deal in Mexico either, so I have no first-hand personal knowledge or evidence that I have gathered that says Ajijic is the best place for expat. But I've got, other people I know who have lived other places that tell me, okay? So that's some evidence anyway. So there's a little fact there. And there are other people who've told me, this place is all right, but over here is better, or over there is better. Well, it's better for them, I think, so I can kind of discount what they say. Now I'm filtering the evidence. Nobody can come to, there's probably, 1 million expats in Mexico, living in Mexico? They're not all here. And they all have very good reasons for being somewhere else. So if I'm truly a critical thinker, I have to look at that and look at their points of view, okay, and bring that into it. And am I feeling, another question to ask is, am I feeling any cognitive dissonance over my belief? In other words, do I have direct evidence that there's a place in Mexico that would be better for me to live, and yet because of inertia or any other reason I choose to stay here? I have some direct evidence that contradicts my belief. The result of that is cognitive dissonance. It's a feeling of unease we get when our gut and our head aren't aligned. So if I'm feeling any clues like that, well, I should perhaps look at this belief. Another question to ask is, how am I viewing that belief? Through what lens? Okay, we all view the world through our own particular lenses that we develop over the course of our lives, depending on our background experience, how this has worked out for us, how that has worked out for us. We see things through a conservative lens or a liberal lens, whatever it is. There's no good and bad here. I'm just saying there are different ways to look at the same question. Two reasonable people can look at the same set of hard data and come to a different conclusion sometimes, okay, based on the point of view or the lens in which they're looking for it. So if I have another person who has a different belief than I do, and I respect them, and I respect their ability to think critically, it behooves me, and it behooves them, it behooves both of us to talk to each other and say, hey, how are you seeing it this way? You dope? No. How are you seeing it this way? Why are you seeing it that way? And perhaps, part of critical thinking is taking everything into consideration. So we have to determine if a particular thing can be viewed differently. There are different points of view. And very often we can't change a belief unless we do change our point of view. We have to change our way of looking at it. As students, and later as adults, we're rewarded for the ability to simply memorize and recall information. In most workplaces today, thinking out of the box is neither encouraged nor appreciated. From the media and society in general comes a constant barrage of messages telling us what to think and what to believe about almost any conceivable subject. It's no wonder that many of us never learn to think critically. Hell, it's a miracle we can think at all sometimes with the barrages that we get. There are a pretty widely accepted set of steps in the critical thinking process that are taught pretty much across the board where people teach critical thinking, secondary schools. And I've kind of changed them just a little bit for my purposes, because I wanted to get into a little more about changing belief systems than just focusing on problem solving, which is what critical thinking is designed to do. The acronym that critical thinkers use, the people who teach critical thinking use for this group of steps is IDEALS, I-D-E-A-L-S, and they stand for identify, define, enumerate, analyze, list, and self-correct. The first thing that needs to be done is we need to identify the problem or the source of the anxiety, in the case of an anxiety. What is the real question or irrational belief that we're facing? Often, very often, the belief that is causing the problem or anxiety is hiding under one or several surface thoughts or beliefs or emotions. Solving the underlying problem or getting to the underlying belief will usually clear up the others as well. If we find the underlying belief or upset, we can generally clear up the whole thing. Arguments, it's like arguments. Arguments between people are seldom about what they're about. As an example, a lot of people have a fear of public speaking. Even those of us who've done it for a good portion of our professional and private lives. I mean, I felt a little nervousness, fear, coming here this morning and before the talk. It's all disappeared now because we'll get to that. What was causing this problem? I mean, in order to make it go away, in order to make that upset go away, I need to peel off the layers to get to the bottom line of the core beliefs that are causing the problem. Right on the surface, the first thought I had is, well, I feel nervous because I'm afraid that you'll think I'm a jerk. Okay? Well, that's not a belief. It's a fear. It's an emotional reaction to a belief. Okay? I can't dispute that. I'm afraid you'll think I'm a jerk. I can't just tell myself, they won't think I'm a jerk. That's not enough to make that knot in my stomach go away. I need to go deeper than that. I can say it's silly, but it doesn't help. The fear of public speaking or the fear of doing anything like this isn't fear of what others will think of us. It's fear of the emotional pain that results from the possibility of feeling something negative about ourselves. We don't want to believe anything negative about ourselves, and when there's a chance that we might, we feel fear. Looking below the thoughts and fears, the beliefs I might have had that might have led to the anxiety are, if someone believes I'm a jerk, then it's true. I am a jerk, okay? But you can see on the surface how irrational that is. Just because someone thinks I'm a jerk, that doesn't make me a jerk. I once read a story about Marlon Brando, saw an interview with Marlon Brando. And he said, if I walk into a room and I know someone in there doesn't like me, I have to leave. I thought to myself when I read that, how pathetic, you know? How could someone have an ego that big that it walks into a room and someone doesn't like them and they have to leave? What does that have to do with it? Another fear that could stem from it is that deep down, I believe that I'm a jerk. Okay? If I believe that I'm a jerk, well, I obviously don't think I'm a jerk. Can what other people think of us really hurt us emotionally? Not really. Not unless we give them the power to do that.
Eleanor Roosevelt.
You only have the power to hurt me if I give it to you. Otherwise, I can't. The last belief there is that I can read minds, that I can tell that you're thinking I'm a jerk. Okay? There's another belief that goes along with that too, though, and that's the belief that, I know it's run longer than I thought it would. Oh, okay. I'm not going to talk that long. I refuse. Lost my train of thought, of course. Define the second question is define the context. What are the facts that frame the problem? Okay, separate the real from the imaginary, the truth from the fiction, and the fact from the preconceived notions. This is often the most important and difficult step because we cannot solve our problems or change our beliefs in the same frame of mind that we use to create them. We're always bumping up against our core beliefs. Okay, whenever we look at a problem, look at an emotional upset, we're always bumping up against different core beliefs. Seldom do we take the time to look at them. Enumerate the choices. What are the plausible options? Brainstorm by yourself or with the help of others. Consider everything possible. Pay particular attention to things you have not tried before. This is something we seldom think of doing. We do the same things over and over and expect the results to be different. Well, that's a definition of insanity. Okay? It's one definition anyway. Seldom will we get out of the box to try something that we haven't tried before. We should sometimes look at that a little more. What is there that I haven't done before? How can I look at this whole problem differently? The next is analyze the options. What is the best course of action? Consider each option from all possible angles to arrive at the best solution. Okay, it's that point of view thing that I was talking about before. How can we look at this problem a little bit differently? List your reasons explicitly, which is another thing that I seldom do. Why is this the best course of action? Which option did you choose and why? If the solution you come up with or the method of easing the upset doesn't work, the list will help you come to a new conclusion. Hey, here's the other things I looked at. I could, plan A didn't work, fine, I'll try plan B. You can only do that if you've got them there in front of you. And then self-correct. Look at it again. What did I miss? Before you put the plan into motion, check it again. Build a checkpoint into the plan where you will revisit it and reevaluate your solution. Does it still fit the facts, and is the plan still viable? All that we do on the basis of some motivations or reasons, but we rarely examine our motivations to see if they make sense. We rarely scrutinize our reasons critically to see if they are rationally justified. As consumers, we sometimes buy things impulsively and uncritically without stopping to determine whether we really need what we are inclined to buy or whether we can afford it, whether it's good for our health or whether the price is competitive. As parents, we often responded to our children impulsively and uncritically without stopping to determine whether our actions are consistent with how we wanted to act as parents. It's quite possible, and unfortunately quite natural, to live an unexamined life, to live in a more or less automated, uncritical way. It is possible to live, in other words, without really taking charge of the persons we are becoming, without developing or acting upon the skills and insights we are capable of. However, if we allow ourselves to become unreflective persons, or rather, to the extent that we do, we are likely to do injury to ourselves and others, and to miss many opportunities to make our own lives and the lives of others fuller, happier, and more productive. On this view, as you can see, critical thinking is an eminently practical goal and value. It's focused on an ancient Greek ideal of living an examined life. It's based on the skills, the insights, and the values essential to that end. It is a way of going about living and learning that empowers us in quite practical ways. That's what I have this morning. Thank you.
I have a question for you. You mentioned emotional payoff. What would you describe what you mean by an emotional payoff about your beliefs?
Well, there are certain beliefs that we can hold that we hold them without questioning them often because they give us an emotional payoff. Okay? There's no good or bad about it. Religion is one like that sometimes. It has an emotional payoff. Neither good nor bad. People don't question it because it's not worth questioning a lot of times because the payoff is so high for them. So that's one. My belief that Ajijic is the best place in Mexico for an expat to live is another one. Okay? If I question that belief, then I really have to go look at some of the premises for that belief. I really have to look at some facts and so on and so forth, which would be rather uncomfortable. I might even have to go somewhere else. I don't want to go anywhere else. So, for a lot of reasons, many of them emotional, that belief is worth its emotional payoff to me.
You touched on being concerned about what other people think of you. There's a book out that I personally adhere to. What you think of me is none of my business. And the other one that I ascribe to is the fact that if my happiness depends on what somebody else does or doesn't do, I've got a problem.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I agree with you 100%. There's an old Zen story that I like that has to do with that. It goes like this. I have lost my favorite teacup. I can have lost my favorite teacup and be happy. I can have lost my favorite teacup and be miserable. Either way, the teacup is gone. Okay? It's my choice how I want to determine that.
Well, I am one of those people who thinks this is the best place in the world. And I have given that great thought, and I have in my whole life never met so many people, and of course I know more women because I'm single, but I just met a new woman right there, Jenny. We are, without any question, we are intelligent. I've not met a dumb woman down here. We are risk takers. I've not met one woman down here who's not a risk taker. We are well traveled. We are well educated, not necessarily in academic halls, but offered throughout the world. And I have come to that conclusion, and at age 80, I either have the money to travel or the energy to travel. And I think there are many of us here who have grown to church in many, many Lutheran, Presbyterian, blah, 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 blah. And we have made the decision, open circle is the best.
Absolutely. Hail Mary.
Very, very nice speech. Talking about the emotional payoff, one of the things that I think human beings desire to stay away from anxiety, and what beliefs do, they keep us away from any sort of ambivalence that will keep us. So whether it's religion or a belief about Ajijic, if I have a belief that this is the best place in the world to live, I don't have any anxiety about should I be here. So it's a way of avoiding the feeling of anxiety.
Exactly right.
Behind you.
Morning. Regarding this question about if you're content with being somewhere, for example in Ajijic, should you exercise that critical thinking? In other words, should I, if I'm content here, should I worry about what it's like elsewhere? Should accepting this be enough? Because if I stop worrying that there are other places that are better, well, I always get the syndrome of the grass is always green on the other side, and that will reduce my contentment of being here.
That's pretty much what David just said. Holding that belief and not questioning that belief, for me is, it makes all that other stuff that you just talked about go away. It's not important. I have no anxiety about it because I don't question the belief.
We have a comment. Stand and hold it close to your mouth with it turned this way.
There's a woman that's known worldwide. Her name is Byron Katie, who asked 4 questions, and I can't remember the 4 questions, but the basic question that she asked in regards to the belief is it true? And what you're saying today is a lot more complicated than the way she presents how we go about disconnecting from beliefs that are dysfunctional to our being.
Yes, but dysfunctional is not the same thing.
Well, I use
as,
that word. I didn't know what
yeah, but see, it doesn't matter if Ajijic is truly the best place in the world to live. It only matters to me what I think.
Hi, this is a question for Rosemary. I'd like to, I think we should maybe get her up there one day to answer this one. What are your thoughts on the expat men of Ajijic?
That's a rhetorical question. Let's move on. No.
Thank you very much for your talk. I'm wondering if your book, Powerless No Longer, is that the name of it, might help someone, I'm thinking of a friend who is chronically depressed, and as far as I can see, a lot of her depression comes from her victim thinking about what a terrible childhood and a terrible life she's had. Now, I'm not a psychologist, so I don't know, but I'm wondering if your book would help somebody who was, just depressed about their life, as opposed to addicted.
My book, of course, is designed to help anyone cure themselves of anything. I am not a therapist. Okay, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist. The last thing I would do would be to comment on something like that. My book has some cognitive, I do know it's Smart Recovery that we deal with some degrees and forms of depression through cognitive means using cognitive therapy techniques. But we're not analysts, we're not, and I don't claim to be, so I'm not going to make a comment on that.
Just a couple of kind of off the train of thought on beliefs and the unexamined life that we're living. But I would think that a life where you're constantly examining everything wouldn't be a good way to live as well. But then doesn't it become a question of prioritizing and deciding on what to examine and what to let slide, like living here, for example, if you already, I think you mentioned that.
Yeah, I think I kind of hit on that right at the beginning when I said it's up to us, obviously, to decide which of these beliefs is causing us problems and which are not. But if we think there are some, then we should perhaps consider looking at that. There are no hard and fast rules here. I always go by what's tightening my gut right now. Okay? My gut's tight. All right? And I notice that. It's a physical symptom. Do I want to get to the bottom of that? It's my choice. I can sit there and wallow. I can suffer. I can, let that thing turn into whatever for however long. Or I can use some of the things I was talking about this morning to go after it. See what it is. What is the core belief that's causing that? That's our choice, obviously.
In the back.
I've enjoyed your talk. One of the things I would like to hear, if you've done any studies on this, is self-fulfilling prophecy, meaning your fears, your greatest fears will come true. If you keep thinking fear, you get a full plate full of what you were fearful of. And how can this relate on a national level with people today dishing out more and more fear over the media, whether we will buy into it or not?
Now, those of you that might have seen the blurb about this talk in Jim's email, it was a bit more macro in focus and a touch dystopian. Yes, you're absolutely right. Fear is a paralyzing agent. Okay, countries get it just the same as people do. The problem is countries and governments tend to follow the money, go where the money is. and not worry about most of the rest of it. But that's, I didn't want to get a bit political here today, and that's why I didn't go there.
Here's another question.
It's not more of a question, but you've been going around it a bit, but part of your point is that we're creatures of habit, no matter what we believe. And part of the ideal, the acronym for helping yourself out is to identify the problem. And I had two parts in my life, identifying the problem, quitting smoking and losing weight. And I employed a lot of your techniques myself, overcoming that. And I know part of your training or ideas are on addiction. And first we have to identify what we're addicted to and what's bad and what's good.
Yeah, well, see, our habits, whether they're addictive or not, smoking is, they become muscle memory. I haven't smoked since 1999. Okay, that's when I quit. I quit by heart attack. They wouldn't let me smoke in intensive care. And my wife threatened to leave me if I didn't quit. But still, I can be walking down the street, and some thought will go through my head and go like that. Why am I doing that? Well, that's just those last few dendrites up there, that muscle memory that is still there, okay? On the way here, I was feeling a little anxiety when I was walking in this morning, and my hand went up to my breast pocket. Why? Well, you know, I chuckle, but it's still there. Those dendrites are still, that muscle memory is still there. That's a good thing the beliefs on it.
Hi, good morning. You seem to have a lot of emphasis.
Oh, hold it close.
Yes, you seem to have a great emphasis on critical thinking, and I was just wondering if you have a thought on thinking about critical feelings. Is there any type of room for critical feelings as well as critical thinking? Because I think there should be also a much larger role for feelings these days, together with critical thinking.
Well, where do our feelings come from? They come from our beliefs. Okay. I feel nervous, I feel upset, I feel tired, well, one's a physical thing, well, they're all physical actually, but they come from my feelings come from my beliefs. Beliefs are the layer underneath that. Okay? They drive, my beliefs drive the feelings. My thoughts drive the beliefs. So actually when you're looking at your beliefs, you are in fact looking at your feelings. It's just the layer below. My feeling of the tightness in my gut and my feeling of trepidation when I'm walking down here this morning to give this talk, well, that's not a belief, that's a feeling. And the feeling was driven by the beliefs that were underneath it. You should all think I'm a jerk. Well, what I really have to realize is that most of you didn't come here this morning to hear me. You came here because this is what you do on Sunday morning. Right? You see your friends and you know, have a good time and chat, and you go out to breakfast and what have you, because that's what you do. You're not here to see me. You know, I just happen to be here. Next week it'll be Alex talking about his newest novel. I mean, but the people will still come. I think it's great that everybody comes here when there's not so many people in town.
Time for one more question? Is there one more? Okay.
Hey, thank you, Pete. You've proved yourself no jerk. Don't even think about it next time.
So next week, you've already heard, our speaker will be Alex Bronson, editor of the Ojo del Lago for the past 18 years. He's got a talk about his recent novel, The Dark Side of the Dream, which ties into the current debate in the U.S. regarding immigration and several other topics. So remember to turn your cell phones back on and pick up your coffee cups and sit chairs. And thank you for coming. We hope to see you next Sunday.